my God. It's embarrassing. If we are going to be together, she have to wear her wig. She's not gonna go with her short hair.
I'm hurt, and now I feel ugly, and I feel unwanted and unloved.
You have to be wearing your wig when we are meeting my friends or meeting people.
Daniel was talking to another girl on social media. At the same time, he was talking to me. Be honest, because I will walk out if you're not.
The moment Daniel saw Lisa without her wig in public, affection did not fade slowly. It flipped, sharp and fast, like a switch that controls permission, respect, and whether she even gets to stand beside him. His face tightened, his voice dropped, and suddenly the woman he proposed to became a problem he needed to manage. That is the real shock. Not the hair, not the look, not culture, not preference, but the speed with which love turned into instructions.
I'm sitting here wondering, is he a scam artist? Is he after me for my money? I just don't think he's telling me the full truth. I think he's giving me little nibbles.
Welcome to TLC Drama Live. I am Sabrina, and if you follow 90 Day Fiancé for the real behavior behind the romance, make sure you subscribe and drop a comment telling me whether you felt angry, sad, or both watching this moment, because what happened to Lisa hit a nerve for a lot of people. Lisa steps out with her real hair showing after days of heat, glue, itching, and pain, and the first thing she reads in his reaction is not surprise, not concern, not softness, but discomfort mixed with embarrassment. And the words follow almost immediately. You need to wear your wig when we meet my friends. You should have stayed inside. You should have told me. As if her own body suddenly required permission. And if you felt your stomach tighten during that scene, you are not dramatic. You are reacting to something deeply human. Humiliation delivered calmly, in public, by the person who claims to love you. Here is a quiet question hiding under the noise. Why did a cosmetic moment turn into a power moment? Because notice how his tone changes only when they step into public space, not in the hotel room, not in private comfort, but the second other people become part of the picture, his language sharpens and control appears. And that shift matters more than anything he says later about beauty or reassurance, because private affection is cheap when public respect is missing, and Lisa feels it instantly. You can hear it in her voice when she asks him if he thinks she is pretty, because that is not a woman asking for a compliment. That is a woman negotiating safety. And this is where the story stops being about hair, style, or attraction. This becomes about vulnerability versus utility. Lisa is vulnerable in that moment, physically tired, emotionally exposed, stripped of the one thing she thought made her acceptable to him, and instead of being met with protection, she is measured, evaluated, and corrected, like something that failed presentation standards. And if you listen closely, you hear how fast she adapts, how fast her words soften, how fast she explains herself, how fast she tries to make the discomfort disappear for him, not for her. Why does Lisa already sound like someone bargaining for approval when she did nothing wrong? Because in relationships where affection depends on compliance, people learn to self-edit before the other person even asks. Daniel later says she should always wear the wig when meeting his friends and family, and that is not a suggestion. That is a rule. And rules about appearance often hide something more important underneath. Rules about image, reputation, and what kind of partner you are allowed to be in someone else's story. If someone controls how you appear in public, they usually want control over what the public never gets to see. And before anyone rushes to defend this as personal taste or cultural expectation, here is the uncomfortable counterpoint. Preference does not require shame, and attraction does not require obedience, because you can dislike a look without humiliating the person wearing it, and you can hold a standard without turning it into a condition for social access. Lisa is not reacting only to what he said, she is reacting to what she suddenly understands. That when she is not useful to the image he wants to present, she becomes inconvenient, and that realization lands quietly. but it lands hard. So, ask yourself something while you keep watching. Why does the warmth return the moment she agrees to put the wig back on? Why does his affection surge exactly when compliance appears? And what else in this relationship only works when Lisa fits the role he needs her to play? Because the next shift in this story is not about hair at all. It is about money. And once you see who really carries the leverage here, this moment starts to look less like a misunderstanding and much more like the opening move in a control game built on access, support, and something Daniel wants far more than Lisa's appearance. The wig wasn't just itchy. It was pulling at her scalp like it had fused into her skin. The heat of Nigeria turning every hour into a pressure cooker. And the glue, meant to keep her confident and camera ready, had now become the thing causing her migraines, sores, and full-blown irritation that bordered on infection. And yet, she still kept it on until the moment her head throbbed so badly she couldn't ignore it anymore. Because this wasn't just about a hairstyle, it was about delaying the moment Daniel would have to see the version of her he didn't sign up for in his head. There's something brutal about that kind of exhaustion, where even pride gives out, not because you've made peace with the decision, but because the physical toll wins. She didn't take the wig off to prove a point. She took it off because her body stopped asking for permission. Her scalp hurt, her skin was raw, and the headaches were compounding every insecurity already clawing at her from inside. But what's disturbing is how this basic human threshold, this moment where physical pain overwhelms emotional self-protection, is where Daniel decides to assert control. That's not random. That's timing. And it's a pattern. See, emotionally coercive dynamics often wait for this exact crack in the wall, not when someone is fully alert and standing strong, but when they're worn down just enough to stop fighting back. Lisa, in that moment, is not defending herself. She's bracing. She's not saying, I get to look how I want. She's saying, I can't do this anymore, and there's a world of difference between a boundary set in confidence and a boundary gasped out in defeat. That difference is where manipulation often walks in. Now, Daniel's reaction makes more sense if you look at it not as surprise, but as strategy. Because instead of helping her, asking if she's okay, noticing that she's visibly in distress, he pivots to disappointment. Why? Because someone else's physical pain isn't a problem if your goal is to shape behavior. In fact, it makes it easier. Exhaustion doesn't just lower defenses, it distorts choices. And that's when control feels like compromise. And Lisa plays right into it. She explains. She rationalizes. She even anticipates his reaction before he says anything. That tells you this moment didn't come out of nowhere. She knew what was waiting on the other side of that wig. That's why she kept it on for so long. But when he finally sees her and doesn't even try to hide his disapproval, the mask doesn't just fall off Lisa's head. The emotional agreement starts cracking too. The unspoken deal that as long as she stayed packaged, she'd be wanted, starts unraveling the moment her body couldn't keep up with the illusion anymore. And instead of that becoming a chance for real acceptance, it becomes a leverage moment. The hair she couldn't keep on turns into the respect he pulls away. And just like that, the moment her body needed care becomes the moment her partner makes her feel ashamed. Why does he treat her health like an inconvenience? Why does she back down from her boundary minutes after asserting it? Why is his affection so conditional that sweat, glue, and pain become reasons to retreat emotionally? And as she prepares to meet him face to face again, now exposed, now vulnerable, still sore and unsure, the stakes aren't about attraction anymore. They're about whether he sees her as a person or a project he's losing interest in the moment the polish fades. When Lisa walks into that hotel lobby without her wig, You can almost feel the temperature drop. Not in the room, but in Daniel's tone, posture, and the energy he sends straight toward her. There's no pause for concern, no blink of empathy, just a single glance that sizes her up, judges the result, and instantly recoils, not with confusion, but with embarrassment so strong he nearly forgets to fake affection. He says, "Oh wow, but it's not all. It's exposure." His face says, "She broke the deal." And you don't flinch that fast unless you were already pretending. He follows with, "Why are you like this?" Like she's made a spectacle of herself on purpose, as if existing without a costume is some kind of betrayal. And that's the word that lingers behind his reaction, betrayal. Not surprise, not discomfort, but like she sabotaged the image he wanted to walk into that evening. That's when it becomes clear this isn't about attraction, it's about presentation. Disgust here isn't romantic disappointment, it's reputational fear. Daniel doesn't say, "I miss your long hair." He says, "If we are going to be together, you have to wear your wig." That's not about intimacy. That's about strategy. He's not preparing for dinner with his fiancé. He's preparing for a campaign stop with his sponsor. And the real her, the one who's tired, human, messy, and visibly older than his curated fantasy, doesn't fit that campaign image. Now, some people might argue this is cultural, that maybe where Daniel comes from, presentation matters more, that maybe public grooming is seen as a reflection of respect. And sure, fair, context does shape expectations. But then, why didn't he say anything about her being in physical pain? Why didn't he ask if she was okay? Why didn't he say, "You look tired? Are you all right?" Because even if preference exists, care should too. And when care disappears at the exact moment the fantasy ends, that's not tradition. That's transaction. He says she looks older. Says she should have told him first. Says she should have stayed inside until it dried. The language isn't rooted in connection. It's tactical. He wants her hidden until she's presentable again. And the only presentable version of Lisa, in his mind, is the one wearing long synthetic hair, purchased femininity, and emotional compliance. If love disappears when the wig does, was it love? Or was it costume approval? And what's most chilling is how fast the energy shifts. 1 hour earlier, she was the woman he paraded in front of his family. Now, she's the woman he wants to keep indoors so his friends don't laugh. That isn't mood. That's hierarchy. He's managing his image through her. And when she stops being useful to that image, he doesn't see a partner. He sees a liability. Lisa doesn't break down in front of him. She holds it in long enough to step aside, away from his disgust, away from his instructions. And the moment she's alone, she folds. You see it in her shoulders, in her voice, in the way she says she feels ugly and wants to hide. Not because of the way she looks, but because of the way she was looked at. That's what breaks people. Not the mirror, but the gaze of someone they thought saw them whole. And if Daniel flinched at the sight of her in real life, what happens next? When Lisa starts to question whether the entire engagement is just a prop, designed to get him something far more valuable than affection? Because what Daniel's afraid of isn't hair, it's exposure. And now, Lisa's beginning to wonder what he's hiding behind his own carefully styled performance. Lisa's voice softens when she's not defending herself. When the cameras catch her alone, not trying to persuade anyone, just whispering into the air that she feels unwanted. And what echoes through that moment isn't about the wig or Daniel's words. It's about the fear of being alone again. That fear is louder than his rejection, louder than the public humiliation, louder even than the doubt creeping in, because Lisa hasn't had someone look at her like she was worth claiming in a long time, and even when that look turns out to be performance, it still fills a space that's been quiet for years. That's where this gets heavy. Not because Daniel is pretending, but because Lisa is pretending too. Not to scam, but to survive. She hasn't told his uncle the full truth about her past, hasn't explained that she's been with women for most of her adult life, that this entire storyline is not just about crossing borders, but about crossing into a new version of herself that might not fully exist yet. And even though she minimized her truth to one relationship, the actual length of her history, the marriages, the full picture, it all stays hidden, even now, because she knows that one disclosure could collapse the fragile approval she's worked so hard to earn. Daniel doesn't know, his family doesn't know, and the pressure to keep it all quiet is crushing her from both sides. But here's the thing. He's hiding too. His past, his romantic history, his motives, all fog. Lisa doesn't ask too many questions because she knows what she's hiding. And when two people are both burying secrets, it becomes dangerous to start digging. That's the trap. Each silence reinforces the other. You don't call mine out, I won't call yours. And they both become prisoners to what they're not saying. Secrets work like currency in uneven relationships. The one who breaks silence first risks losing more. So what leverage does Lisa actually have? Money, yes. Legal access, yes. But emotionally? She's already bought the fantasy, and if she backs out now, she doesn't just lose Daniel. She loses the story she's been telling herself. That she's still desirable. That this is real. That this isn't a last shot disguised as a bold choice. And what about Daniel? If her truth comes out, the engagement could fracture. But if his truth comes out, the real truth about intentions, about other women, about how deep the deception might go, he loses more than love. He loses the entire plan. It's Lisa's daughter, Faith, who finally punctures that silence. Lisa calls her from the hotel room, and the moment Faith picks up, it's like a different version of Lisa emerges. Less defensive, more uncertain. Like she's asking for someone to ground her when everything around her feels curated and fake. She tells Faith about the parade, about Daniel's sudden reaction to the wig, about the emotional whiplash of being adored one moment and dismissed the next. But even in that conversation, Lisa hesitates to say what she really feels. Because once it's said out loud, it becomes real. Faith doesn't yell. She doesn't mock. But she doesn't buy the fantasy either. She's the one voice in this story that isn't emotionally compromised. And what she says next, quiet, direct, and impossible to ignore, is about to shake Lisa out of her performance and into the next confrontation. Because Daniel might be hiding a motive, but Lisa's been hiding a fear. And only one of them is ready to say it out loud. Faith doesn't need to scream for her words to cut clean through the fog Lisa's been spinning. She hears about the parade Daniel arranged, how Lisa was blown away by the effort, the costumes, the attention, the public display of devotion. And she cuts straight to the question that guts the whole charade. You're sending him money all the time. So, how is he affording a whole parade? The silence after that hits harder than any insult. Because Faith isn't being cruel. She's being precise. And that's what makes it hurt. Lisa doesn't have a real answer. She fumbles, stammers, leans back on emotion, not math. But here's the part that viewers can't ignore. Lisa's already told us she works 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's not comfort. That's survival mode. And yet Daniel, the man she's been funding, has enough to orchestrate a street performance, invite a crowd, and throw a romantic spectacle for the cameras. The economics don't match the narrative. That moment isn't just about dollars. It's about intention. It's about the pattern of grand gestures that are engineered for effect, not partnership. Every big move Daniel makes seems to be built on Lisa's blind spot, her desperation to feel chosen. He proposes quickly. He organizes public displays. He showers her with praise when she's complying. But what happens the second she steps out of script? Affection vanishes. That's not random. That's structured. Love bombing isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like attention calibrated to keep the other person off balance. One day he's on his knees. The next, he recoils from her without a wig. One moment she's a queen. The next, she's an inconvenience. That instability is the hook. Lisa keeps chasing the version of him that adored her, hoping it'll come back if she performs just right. And Daniel? He never has to explain the math, the history, or the future. He just has to say thank you, smile when she gives, and pull away when she pushes. And Lisa knows, somewhere in her gut, she knows she should be asking more direct questions. About the money, about who paid for what, about the debt she's now carrying to sustain this long-distance fantasy. But every time she gets close, she pulls back. Because if she gets a real answer, she might not like what she hears. Daniel, for his part, never lies outright. At least not on camera. He deflects, redirects, repeats phrases like, "You changed my life, and I'm grateful for you," because those phrases don't reveal anything. Gratitude, in this case, is a wall that keeps the hard questions out. And now, with Faith's voice echoing in her mind, and Daniel's inconsistencies stacking up, Lisa is finally ready to test what's real. The next step is the friends meeting. She wants to hear who Daniel was before her, who he is when she's not funding the narrative. But what she's about to walk into isn't confirmation. It's deflection in stereo. And watching her chase truth from people who have every reason to lie will make one thing painfully obvious. This isn't just a romance. It's a performance with too many people backstage. When Lisa sits down across from Daniel's friends, you can feel it in the air. They're not here to build a bond. They're here to manage a situation. The smiles are tight, the compliments are vague, and the conversation starts with praise that sounds more like a testimonial than a celebration. "You transformed his life," one of them says, with the tone of someone reciting a practice line, not someone sharing joy. It's not "he loves you" or "you two are perfect together." It's "you changed his life." A line that centers Daniel's benefit, not their connection. Lisa picks up on it instantly. There's no talk about shared values, emotional compatibility, or memories they've created together. Instead, every compliment is transactional. They talk about how Daniel only had one pair of shoes before her, how his clothes had holes, how now he looks different. That isn't a love story. It's a before and after commercial. And Lisa, whether she admits it out loud or not, hears the difference. But it's not just what they say. It's how they say it. One friend can't make eye contact. Another smirks when Lisa brings up money. When she shifts the topic from admiration to accountability, asking questions about Daniel's past, other women, his intentions, the energy changes. They become evasive, they deflect, they laugh uncomfortably. One even lets out a maybe she lies when Lisa mentions a warning from another woman who claimed Daniel was a scammer. That's not disbelief, that's mockery. And it's not subtle. When people laugh through accusations, it usually means the truth isn't safe to say out loud. Daniel doesn't rush to shut it down. He watches, waits, then throws out a line about how she picked him from the gutter. He feeds the narrative that he's been saved, that she rescued him, not because he's humbling himself, but because that framing keeps her emotionally indebted to him. Gratitude, again, becomes the shield. Lisa, to her credit, doesn't swallow it whole this time. She nods, she listens, but her face hardens. The performance isn't landing. Not the group admiration, not the subtle jokes, not the empty reassurances. These men don't talk like friends proud of a love match. They talk like employees protecting a paycheck. And Lisa starts to see it. That this engagement isn't just between her and Daniel. It's a shared investment. So who really benefits if this marriage happens? Daniel, obviously. His lifestyle shifts dramatically. But the people around him? They gain access, status, maybe even help. And what does their silence protect? A system that works for them. A fantasy they don't want disturbed. Lisa feels it now. That she's the only one who walked into this believing it was personal. And maybe that's what finally gives her the edge. She stops trying to be liked and starts trying to get answers. The compliments don't land anymore. The awkward chuckles don't distract. The next question she asks doesn't hide behind niceness. And she's not afraid to let them know. If something's being hidden, she'll dig until she finds it. Because she's starting to realize she might be the only one here who actually has something real to lose. When Lisa first got those screenshots from another woman warning her about Daniel, she did what most people in denial do. She downplayed it, tucked it away, told herself maybe the girl was jealous, maybe she misread, maybe it didn't matter. But now, after sitting through Daniel's friends echoing how much she's changed his life, without once mentioning how much he values her, the timing of those screenshots suddenly feels sharper, like a puzzle piece that only fits after you've seen the full picture. The other woman claimed Daniel was sending her the same flirty messages, the same sweet nothings, the same promises. Lisa ignored it then, but her face when she recalls that moment now is telling. She didn't dismiss it because she believed Daniel. She dismissed it because she needed to. Once your heart is on the hook, evidence starts to feel like sabotage. And Lisa had already paid. In time, money, reputation, and risk. She wasn't ready to admit she might be just one of many. So she held on to the version of him that told her she was the only one. But Daniel's pattern with hard questions is always the same. He smiles. He deflects. He makes it about how grateful he is. When producers ask him point blank if he's talked to other American women, he shifts his weight, lets out a nervous laugh, and drops the classic half-truth. I talk to a lot of people, but only Lisa is serious, which is another way of saying, yes, but I'm not going to give you a direct answer. He knows what not to admit, especially on camera. And even when he tries to deny interest, he focuses on emotion, not action. I never felt anything for them, he says, carefully dodging whether he actually pursued them. That's the tell. His language is always about how he felt, not what he did. Because feelings are harder to disprove. Actions leave trails. Screenshots. When someone keeps changing the subject from specifics to sentiment, it's usually because the details don't support the story. And this isn't about jealousy anymore. It's about patterns. If Daniel's only ever serious with the one who sends money, then how many women did he keep around just long enough to see who would cross the finish line? Why are they always American? Why did this move so fast after just a few months of talking in December? That's when probability matters more than promises. Because even if Lisa is special to him now, how many other versions of this relationship were quietly running in the background, waiting to see who would take the bait? This isn't about attraction. It's about opportunity. If he's playing odds, the woman who says yes first becomes the one he commits to until she can't pay or starts asking too many questions. Back in her hotel room, away from the charm and confusion, Lisa finally cracks. She's not sobbing. She's quiet, tired. The kind of tired that comes when your gut and your heart finally start agreeing. And her confession is low but heavy. I just don't think he's telling me the full truth. Not angry, not loud. Just finally honest with herself. And maybe that's the scariest part. Realizing the person she flew across the world for might be holding her in the same category as all the others she tried not to believe existed. Something starts to shift inside Lisa as she lies awake that night. Not because of a single blowout or revelation, but because the threads finally start weaving themselves into one tight knot she can't untangle. His shame over her appearance, his silence about his past, his slippery answers about other women, and the carefully timed affection that always seems to arrive when she gives in or wires money. These weren't isolated incidents. They were a pattern. And now she can feel it. Control isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like compliments that only come when you dress how someone wants. Sometimes it sounds like you're always beautiful right after they've called you embarrassing. And sometimes it comes in silence, when your questions go unanswered and your doubt is redirected into guilt for even asking. Lisa starts replaying the moments backward. The wig situation, the way he reacted in front of friends, the tight grip he keeps on what his life was like before her, and the parade he organized using money she worked 15-hour shifts to earn. There's a rhythm there. He controls the image she presents. And he controls the information she receives. One makes her feel unworthy. The other keeps her off balance. When someone manages how you look and what you know, they're not building a relationship, they're managing a brand. Now, some people watching might say, but long-distance couples do move fast. They get engaged quickly, they're emotional, they don't want to lose momentum. And sure, that happens. But real urgency usually comes with transparency, with effort, with sacrifice on both sides. What Daniel offers instead is spectacle, not substance. He dodges questions, distracts with big gestures, and then rewrites expectations the moment something doesn't fit his version of what she should be. And every time she peels back one layer, something uglier sits underneath, like the parade. At first, it felt like romance, but now it feels like a performance she paid for, but didn't get to direct. Lisa starts wondering, if she hadn't sent money, if she hadn't said yes so quickly, if she'd taken even a week longer to agree, would any of this still be happening? What happens when the money runs thin? What happens when the glow wears off? Would Daniel still be here if the support dried up? Or is this love already tied to a transaction she didn't even realize she signed? That's when Daniel says the line that finally strips all the decoration from the situation. Not to comfort her, not to calm her fears, but to guilt her into silence. You picked me from the gutter. You clothe me. You feed me. Why would I play with you? And that's the problem. That line isn't romantic. It's strategic. It weaponizes gratitude. It flips dependence into virtue. It's not a denial of wrongdoing. It's a reminder that she owns the narrative, so she better not ruin it. And for the first time, Lisa doesn't look flattered. She looks trapped. Because what sounded like love now sounds like leverage. And she's finally starting to wonder what happens when she stops being the lifeline. The next time we see Lisa, the wig is back on. No fanfare, no announcement, no empowered decision, just quiet compliance. As if somewhere between exhaustion and hope, she made the trade she swore she wouldn't make again. And Daniel? He lights up, not slowly. Instantly, his voice softens, his smile widens, the tone shifts back to romance mode like the glitch in their connection never happened. And that's when the game becomes undeniable. His approval is not tied to Lisa. It's tied to her behavior. This isn't resolution. It's regression. The second she visually matches his expectations again, he rewinds the performance and starts pouring charm right back into her. And Lisa lets it happen, not because she's convinced, but because the cost of confrontation feels higher than the cost of pretending. For now. You can see her eyes tracking the reaction, how fast he praises her again, how suddenly she's beautiful again. The relief on his face isn't relief that she feels better. It's relief that the problem her noncompliance is fixed, that the glitch in the fantasy has been patched. And if that doesn't raise alarms, it should. Love that only returns when you fall back in line isn't love. It's reward. This moment is textbook intermittent reinforcement. It's what keeps people stuck in relationships that chip away at them. The affection comes inconsistently, in bursts, usually after a rupture, and the brain starts chasing that high like a gambler at a slot machine. You stop asking, "Is this good?" and start asking, "What do I need to do to get the good version back?" Daniel doesn't need to re-earn trust. He doesn't need to apologize for the shame or the dismissal. All he has to do is look pleased again, and Lisa starts to feel like maybe the storm has passed. But all that's happened is that she reset the boundary he shattered by reinforcing it herself. So, what did she pay for this peace? More than just her appearance. She paid in silence. She paid in delayed questions. She paid by swallowing the ache that started when he made her feel like she shouldn't be seen. And she reinforced that message by walking back into his space, wearing the thing that made her acceptable, not to herself, but to him. And what future boundary just collapsed? The one where Lisa might have said, "If you can't love me when I'm raw, don't claim me when I'm polished." That line is gone now. Muted. Blurred by the approval she didn't want to need, but still craved. The relationship moves forward, technically. They head toward dinner, arm in arm, wig on, camera rolling. But the trust is limping. And Lisa knows it. She's starting to understand that every time she surrenders a piece of herself to keep him close, she's not preserving love, she's preserving an illusion. The future isn't closed yet. But the silence between them is growing louder, and the version of herself she's sacrificing to keep this going may not survive the next test. By the time Lisa sits beside Daniel again, wearing the wig, smiling for the camera, laughing a little too hard at things that aren't funny, it's clear what's happened. This isn't resolution. It's routine. Not the kind couples build through connection, but the kind built on bargaining. Every planted question from the start has led to this moment. Why did a cosmetic decision feel like betrayal? Because her appearance was tied to his reputation. Why did his affection vanish the moment she stepped out of frame? Because compliance, not closeness, is what keeps her in favor. Why do his friends treat her like a sponsor, not a partner? Because they already see the structure. What she gives, what he gains, what they protect. Lisa isn't stupid. And this story was never about her being naive. It's about what people do when they're starved for connection and offered something that looks close enough. Her vulnerability became a currency. And Daniel allegedly knew how to convert that into value, affection, access, attention when she conformed, guilt when she didn't, and silence whenever the mask slipped. She's beginning to see it, but she hasn't changed her behavior yet. That's the heartbreak. She knows something's off. She feels the imbalance. But she's still hoping the fantasy version of Daniel will resurface and make the doubt disappear. So instead of pulling back, she leans in. Instead of confronting the pattern, she adjusts herself to fit it. She calls it compromise. But it looks a lot like self-erasure. And for now, she's not ready to walk. That's what emotional control can look like. Small choices you make against yourself to preserve someone else's comfort. So let's make it practical. If someone's approval only arrives after you correct yourself, you're not in a relationship. You're in a training program. If someone insists you look a certain way to be acceptable, but calls it love, they're not loving you. They're branding you. And if every generous act you do is later used to silence your questions, that's not appreciation. That's a debt they plan to collect. Daniel doesn't have to raise his voice to hold power. All he has to do is smile when she obeys and go cold when she doesn't. And that smile that calculated kindness is sometimes more dangerous than anger because it keeps you guessing, keeps you trying harder, keeps you thinking that if you give a little more, behave a little better, you'll finally be safe. But love that requires shrinking is not safety. It's submission. The story ends quietly, not with a fight, not with a breakup, but with one lingering moment. Lisa glances at Daniel, her face tight, her voice flat, and asks the one question that doesn't sound like performance. Do you love me? Or do you just love what I do for you? He doesn't answer, at least not on camera. Maybe he doesn't know. Or maybe he knows too well. That silence tells more than any vow or gift ever could. Because when you ask that kind of question and the person across from you freezes, it's not always because they're surprised. Sometimes it's because you've hit the part of the story they hoped you'd never reach. And if you're wondering what happens when the giving slows down, when the money stops, when the support shifts, when the performance loses its audience, watch my next video where we unpack exactly how fast affection disappears when the transaction ends and the visa talk begins.